Today's episode is brought to you by Media for All, which was set up to help encourage more Black, Asian, and other ethnic talent into media, and to provide a support and mentoring network to ensure talent flourishes in the media industry that we all love. If you're looking for a mentor or would like to mentor young ethnic talent, check them out at mediaforall.org.uk, and it is all 100% free. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I am the founder of Automated Creative, and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders, and this week is no different. I'm on a call with Caitlyn Nguyen, who is the Digital Transformation Lead, Consumer Healthcare, APAC, China, Eurasia, Middle East, Africa, at Sanofi. Just wanted to get every single bit of your remit in there. Caitlyn, for those of the people in the audience who don't know who you are or what you do, could you give them a brief overview?
Yeah, sure, Tom. Thanks for that. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlyn. I'm based here in Singapore, and I look after digital transformation for our consumer healthcare business unit at Sanofi. And my work entails working with marketing teams and commercial teams, and by leveraging data, technology, and all things digital to bring greater value back to business.
Fantastic. So you've got a massive remit in terms of the markets that you cover, and any kind of transformation is a huge project, even in one market. So you must have had quite a extensive experience and journey to get there. But what is the kind of advice you would give to someone who would want to follow in your footsteps, that would want to follow a similar type of career? What would you say to a student in 2021?
Yeah, so for anyone who's keen to learn and to get into digital, and in particular digital transformation, what I would say is always maintain your sense of wonder, right? Your sense of curiosity and wonder about what digital and tech can do for you as an individual, as a consumer, as a customer, for others, and then lastly for brands and businesses, right? So it's if you're able to internalize and sort of articulate a sense of what it means to you, sort of having that purpose, then it makes the job much more enjoyable, and it makes sort of your output more relevant and more meaningful.
And so, how would you propose that they actually do that? Because it's a very nice thing to say, maintain your sense of wonder. I wrote that down. I love it. But someone gets swamped. Right, you've got to write a 120 slide deck for combining the the click through rates of all these 5 different markets, or whatever it is, and sometimes the wonder can just get absolutely blasted out of the water by the day to day. So how do you maintain it, or how do you resurrect it?
Well, the way it is worked for me, and my own personal experience, with this is I think about the connection that I want to build with my customer, or my consumer. So I put myself in the consumer's shoes, right? What does good look like for the consumer when they experience your brand, when they experience your business? What does good look like? And then also, what does amazing, what does great look like? Right. So it's really staying, connected, or establishing sort of that mental and emotional connection with the consumer that you have in mind, which leads me to a related point, or rather, sort of what I touched upon earlier, is sort of the sense of wonder. It's about purpose. So for yourself, think about, kind of what gets you out of bed each day, and that's going to become meaningful when kind of things get tough, things get rough at work, right? When you're under a lot of pressure, when there's a lot of stress, politics, whatever it is, that makes the working life a bit uncomfortable, and that's inevitable. But as long as you stay kind of centered on that sense of purpose, and you can articulate for yourself what gets you out of bed. Why do you care about digital? What is it about digital that's meaningful, for you and for the consumer, like I was saying earlier, right? And go kind of cerebral about it. How can you lead a purpose-driven life with digital, with tech, with data? Because there's kind of pros and cons, right, to digital, kind of the dark side and the light side. And so, what does it mean for you? And this purpose, like, that I'm talking about, it could be embedded in a brand, your brand, and or in the organization, or it could be more internal. It could just come from you. I find that if it comes from you, then it makes things more bearable when things get tough. So I would say, if you're thinking about digital, if you think about the work of transformation, really start to interrogate within yourself this sense of purpose and this sense of connection.
So, what has been your best investment of time, energy, or money in your career?
Meeting people, meeting as many people as possible, those from different backgrounds, those who have very different points of view from yourself. And this usually means attending different events, both in person as well as virtual. Ask many questions, right? No question is silly. It doesn't have to be you don't have to be super smart to ask particular questions about someone's profession or what's been somebody's experience. So for me, it's really about learning, networking, accepting that each opinion is different. For each conviction that you have about anything, about your work, or about what's the right thing, there's always an opposing view. But please, be open to be challenged, be open to feeling uncomfortable. And I put myself in these situations, right? Either in the form of doing, fireside chats, on panels, round tables, even, training, volunteering your time and energy. It's been very meaningful for me, and it's given me the sense of perspective that I bring to my work.
And how have you done that over lockdown? How have you managed to make sure that you're being exposed to different points of view and being made to feel uncomfortable, as you say, in a non-meeting people environment?
Yeah, exactly the way you and I are connecting now, via Teams, via Zoom. So
But I mean, how do you find uncomfortable and different conversations? Because sure, we all connect via video conferences. That's sort of fair enough. But how do you, like? I'll get to my point. If you go to a conference, you can go, "Oh, I never thought about going to XYZ, so I'll go into that room or I'll go and listen to that talk and just be challenged." Whereas it's harder to do that online because you're like, right, I need to learn about X. Oh, there's a conference about X. I'll go to that, and there's less serendipity. So how have you made sure that you've had been exposed to points of view that challenge you?
it's a structured approach, so as well as an unstructured approach. So for example, a structured is like, if there are virtual events, conferences that are organized, and there's always an agenda, and there's always sort of timeline, timetable, etc. Unstructured, it's more kind of the informal network thing that anyone can do easily, and that's what I've done even before COVID, right? And especially last year throughout COVID. So I propose virtual teas or virtual coffees or virtual happy hours, and kind of engage with other industry professionals about their experiences and their learnings and their failures. And I was surprised that most folks were very open to this type of an exchange.
And how did
It's
you
very
set that up?
unusual.
Did you just sort of reach out to randoms on LinkedIn, or was there a way of doing this in a more
Actually, that
organized way?
was something that I found very, very interesting and enjoyable. Actually, reaching out to those, through LinkedIn or through other networks, say, hey, I think we can trade a few stories, right, about XYZ. Would you be keen to, having a virtual tea or coffee? And I was surprised. I was actually at sort of a test for me, and I was really surprised that most folks were very open to it. I think, at the human level, we were all kind of yearning to connect, and this was sort of an unusual new way of connecting. So it's been a very positive experience. And so
So
post COVID and the new normal, I would continue this both
yeah,
virtually as well as in person.
and before we get to your shiny new object, can you share a marketing tip that you live by, or have always shared, or have heard recently?
So I have a small team of analysts and researchers on my team, and you know they are very data driven. They're very analytical, and you know I always say it's funny because you live in data, you sleep with data and insight, but we need to extract it out even more beyond the insight. What does it mean for the consumer? How do we empathize with the consumer in the most meaningful way? And especially now with the shifts and the changes in consumer behavior and consumer expectations. So how do we really turn data, use data, leverage data? And so I would say for any marketeer, be in the shoes of the consumer, empathize, but please empathize, with data, and not, ignore kind of the signals that the right type of data could give you.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with MadFest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from MadFest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we'll move on now to your shiny new object. And you have called it the future of connections in the time of COVID. So that sounds cool, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, it was really interesting when I was thinking about connections and the future of connections during times of COVID and post COVID, right? We all know that digital experiences for us as employees and workers as well as for brands, that's it's been evolving, and with COVID, um, needs evolve, expectations evolve, patience has shrunk. And so I've been thinking about it from first the point of view of a marketeer, so from a marketing point of view. um, then I also thought about it from more of a commercial, of a sales point of view, what this notion of connection and digital connections mean. And then last but not least, from an employee worker point of view. So if I could go back to marketing, I talked before about really connecting with the consumer, making sure that the consumer bonds to you, bonds to your brand, being there for the consumer throughout the different moments in your life. And if I were to bring it even closer to home for me, interestingly, I would liken this the social isolation during the pandemic to my life as a first-time mother. Okay, first-time mother taking care of an infant, the intensity of emotion, both positive and negative, um, that was prevalent during that time. And for the consumer, you know, there's almost this call to engage with me, right? To educate me, to surprise and delight me, um, because I will remember how I feel, right? I may not remember all of your advertising messages. I may not remember, the the promotions, right? That was offered to me, but I'll remember how I feel, right?
So can I just get a bit of clarity on one point before you continue? So I'm making some assumptions about the the good and bad things that happen during being a young mother, and I have a small child, so that's very sort of resonant for me. Obviously, I wasn't the mother, but can you just give a bit more detail, be more specific about what that was like and why that is relevant exactly to people in lockdown?
Yeah, look, as a first-time mother, I had heard, from other folks or other moms, like more experienced mom, to say, don't isolate yourself. It's very easy to be isolated. You can always reach out. There are, tools and there are communities out there. Um, so, make sure you don't, kind of go down that path and think that you're going through all of this alone, right? And as much as I understood kind of that from a rational perspective, I think when I was experiencing motherhood, I did feel, that sort of isolation. And it was when I was desperate, right, to really get, breastfeeding and feeding and sleep and, taking care of a very young child, get it all right. It wasn't until I actually found, sort of in my case, it was sort of the right community. And interestingly, it was a sort of a community that was, let's say, sponsored by a brand, right? But it wasn't so much of the branded experience. It was more the emotional human experience as a mom. Um, and this was kind of like, it was called the Connected Mums Club, right? And it was just very, very meaningful because I felt safe, and I felt, okay, so here is a community that is nurturing and that is also, solution oriented at the same time, right? So it was done in a way that wasn't very commercial. It was very much around marketing, consumer engagement. So that was more from the business perspective, right? But it wasn't experienced and received that way. And so, going back to my earlier notion about, uh, connections and digital connections for the consumer, it's similar, right? So you're working from home, or you have to do schooling, and your life becomes just very, very complex, but you still have, various needs, if it's health, or if it's personal care, whatever it is. um, I think what makes a difference, is the type of connections that brands can create, um, that you know gets you to feel this way, gets you to feel surprised and delighted, but at the same time there's like a practical meaning behind that. And then, of course, yes, I do need this product, please, I want to buy from you.
So why is that? So I get the analogy about people locked at home are a bit like first time moms who don't really know what's going on, and they're emotional, and they need sorry, they have different emotions, and they need support for those emotions, but also they need practical advice and kind of everything in between. And you're saying that actually brands need to provide that and more, but how is that different because of the pandemic? And shouldn't they have been doing that anyway?
I think they definitely should have been, doing that, but I think with the pandemic, it's even more intense, it's even more, sort of this need, this intensity of the need. And brands that get there first, will succeed, and the consumer will stick to that brand and that brand's ecosystem in terms of that experience.
So how do brands get started with this? How do they? Someone's listening to this thinking, "Yeah, totally down with that. We're not doing that, but we need to." Where is the first step?
Yeah, I think it really starts with insight. It really starts with working within the org, within your org, within your teams, to design a very holistic, more end-to-end, it doesn't have to be perfectly end-to-end, but more holistic view of the moments that matter. Yeah, I mean, this is one of kind of the important pillars of transformation, right? It's really to really unlock the meaning behind these connections, and then to deliver against that. It's not easy. The other piece that I had in mind, in terms of thinking about connections is in the commercial space is, in the new norm during and post COVID, we have an opportunity to kind of bring forth new commercial initiatives, commercial use cases, similarly to e-commerce, right? Sort of that sort of business to business relationships are being digitized. In our space, customers, other doctors may favor, Zoom for a lot of the in-person meetings, and a lot of this behavior would persist when we get back to well, the old norm, the old new norm, right? Some favor emails and other channels, WhatsApp, Signal. So, we've seen that the boundaries between sales, telesales, remote call center service are really, really blurring. And so, for us, we've started to really think about this and start to think, in terms of the different commercial personas, the sales force, the customers that we meet, and similarly, what is a meaningful connection for them, what type of information, what type of content that is meaningful, and then what would persist when things are back to normal post-vaccine world. So it's really looking at that and really defining those really specific use cases. You don't have to do so many, just do one or two, and test and learn.
I like that a lot. But unfortunately, we have to call it a day there. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would you like them to do that?
I'm available on LinkedIn.
That was a big sigh after that. That was a very big sigh after you said I'm available.
No, I was
on
thinking
LinkedIn.
of Twitter. I was thinking of Twitter, but I'm not so active on Twitter anymore. LinkedIn is great, and if you want to do a virtual tea or virtual coffee, I'd be open to that.
What a great idea. Caitlyn, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That'd just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.